Okay, so I believe we are now live. So I want to thank everyone who is joining us today on this sunny afternoon. I know that there are other things you could be doing outside. So thank you for joining us. My name is Brianna Treleven. I am the executive director of the Shaker Historical Society in Shaker Heights, Ohio. And this is my third director's desk talk. And I'm very happy to be joined today by another director, Angel Chapman, who is executive director of NewONEShaker. And thank you for joining us today, Angel.
Thank you.
Before we kind of jump into what NewONEShaker is and what Angel does in the community, I'm going to share a little bit about the Shaker Historical Society and our history. So let me pull up my presentation. Let's share screen. Okay, so can you see my
yes,
slideshow?
absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I want to give a little bit of our history. So we were founded as an organization in 1947, basically to preserve the heritage of the Shakers. And while there were Black Shakers, there were actually entirely Black Shaker communities in the US. The Shakers as a whole were a very white community, a white religion. And the North Union Shakers did have some African-American Shakers, but again, predominantly white. So the reason I bring this up is because we're talking about representation, and literally from our founding, we have been kind of focusing on a white history. It's also the reason that we are called the Shaker Historical Society and not the Shaker Heights Historical Society, because we kind of get questions about that, or we get called the wrong name, and it makes sense because, you know, we now try to preserve the history of the city, but at our founding, it was very much focused on the Shakers. We had moved from site to site as a museum. In our early years, we were located in schools and in the library, but we opened to the public in our current location, the Myers Mansion, in 1971. Again, I bring this up. The important thing to note in this situation is that the Myers Mansion, it is a beautiful building. It was donated to us. We are incredibly grateful to have this as our home, but it is the home of a wealthy white family. And it is in the Boulevard neighborhood, which is a wealthier neighborhood. And so it doesn't necessarily feel welcoming to everyone. I know for a fact that that is true because we actually put out a community survey last fall, and we got some responses that people said that the museum feels very exclusive, it does not feel welcoming. And so not only does our history kind of play into that, but we are trying to be mindful that our physical building does as well. As I mentioned, the original focus of the museum was on the Shakers, but there were galleries that were added dedicated to Warrensville Township and the Van Sweringen brothers in the early 1970s, so around 1973, 1974. Once again, the focus was on the white settlers of Warrensville Township, the Manx immigrants, and the white Van Sweringen brothers. And so today in 2021, our museum consists of one temporary exhibit gallery and then 4 permanent exhibit galleries. 3 of those are on the Shakers, 1 is on the Van Sweringen brothers. So I bring all of this up because it is very obvious that even though Shaker Heights as a city has, you know, a history of diversity and inclusion that we are very proud of, that is not represented in our museum, and that is historically, as I said, not represented because we were founded to focus on the Shakers. And even now, our current board is majority white. Our current staff is entirely white. So from an organizational perspective, that representation is not seen at SHS. And Black, Indigenous, and people of color are currently not represented at all in our permanent exhibits. As I mentioned, there are 3 that are devoted to the Shakers, and there's 1 devoted to the Van Sweringen brothers and early development of Shaker Heights as a city. and BIPOC are also disproportionately underrepresented in our collections, which includes physical objects, photographs, and archives. So this photo that I have on the right is the 1969-1970 annual report from the Ludlow Community Association. And the reason that I wanted to include it was because we actually received a research request, I want to say maybe a month or two ago, looking for information about integration and voluntary busing in Shaker Heights. And this annual report was one of, I think, 5 objects I could find in our collection related to that period of history, which is really upsetting to me because it's such an important part of our history. And I was not able to provide really any information to this researcher because it is underrepresented in our collection. And I know that the library has a wealth of information. That's kind of where a lot of stuff has been donated over the years. And so it is in our community, but not at SHS. And we also have made past efforts to try to be more diverse and inclusive. I'm not going to go in depth with any of these, but I didn't want to completely discount it. You know, there have been attempts, but as you can kind of see just from what I've gone over, even though we say that we are a community museum and that we represent the community, that is not true. And we want it to change. We truly do want to be representative of the community, but as of right now, we tell a very white story. We are a very white organization. And so how do we move forward from this? We very much want to diversify and build trust in our board and staff. And I want to really emphasize that trust, because I don't think that anything can really happen in terms of diversifying our board or diversifying our collections if there isn't that trust in us. And so I think very much the first step is building that trust. Like, I've only been at the organization for a year. Our educator has been here for less than that. And so we have like a fairly new staff. Many of our board members have joined within the past year or two. And so we're kind of fresh faces, but again, because of that, like, we do need to build that trust. And so that's kind of step one, is building that trust and being transparent about where we're coming from and where we're trying to get to. We also very much want to highlight and support the history-based work that is already being done in the community, because there's no point in reinventing the wheel or doing the work all over again when there are already these dedicated individuals in our community who are doing the work, and they deserve the recognition. So the one that I mentioned is the Moreland History Project and Oral Histories, because I learned about this last summer when I first virtually met Kamala Lewis, and it's just amazing to me what they were able to put together and compile as a community. And it's such a passion project, because anyone who works in history knows it's very much based in passion and a love for your history. And so I think, as I said, kind of highlighting and supporting that work. So if that's already going on in the community, not coming in as an organization and replacing it, but how can we support you? How can we support your efforts? That's very important to me. And then we also very much want to center BIPOC voices as we expand and diversify our collections. We have plans to curate new permanent exhibits to expand beyond those exhibits I already mentioned. But in those cases, that should not be me telling those stories. That is not my story to tell. So centering those voices as we apply for grants, again, including other people in those grant writing processes, developing programs. And this is something that Angel and I have talked a little bit about, but organizing pop-up exhibits in the community, going back to the fact that not everyone feels comfortable at our physical space. Well, then we need to bring our history to people in the community. And Angel and I have already kind of very briefly talked about doing pop-up exhibits and collaborations, which I think is very cool. And so the last thing is collaborating with and learning from community activists, organizers, and organizations such as NewONEShaker. And so just as a final thing, if that was a very quick and kind of high level overview of the lack of representation at SHS and what we are hoping to do moving forward. But if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please reach out to me at director@shakerhistory.org. So I will stop sharing my screen right now and let me pull up another document very quickly. So now I will formally introduce Angel Chapman. Angel serves as the executive director for NewONEShaker. She also serves on the board of directors for the Shaker Heights Youth Center and in supportive leadership for Shaker PTO Council. Angel's academic credentials include a law degree from Florida A&M University and a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from North Carolina A&T State University. She is a Shaker graduate and a mom to 5 amazing adult children, 3 of whom are Shaker alumni. So Angel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having NewONEShaker. I really appreciate it.
So I guess the very first question, just what is NewONEShaker?
Well, I will be happy to tell you about NewONEShaker, but first I want to say thank you for asking us to be a part of this conversation with you. And also I have to say, I really appreciate your transparency and your authenticity, as well as the self-reflection for the Shaker Historical Society. You know, it's wonderful to see an organization directly address the problems and the solutions around equity. And so with NewONEShaker's foundation being set in equity, that just is music to my ears. So I really, really appreciate that. But just to tell you a little bit about NewONEShaker is a relatively new community-based nonprofit organization. We started in December of 2019 with a bunch of concerned citizens, and they are dedicated, it's diverse, they're educated, they're just really committed individuals that serve on our leadership team as well as our board of directors. Our organization is primarily focused on achieving educational equity for every student and family in Shaker. And so when I say educational equity, you may think that just involves the schools, but it doesn't just involve the schools, because we take a very holistic approach at equity. So that involves schools, students, parents, the city, the community, the businesses, the organizations. Essentially, what we want to do is to help improve the outcome for students and families of Shaker. We do that through various means with training, equity training. We provide programming around recreation for kids and things like that. So we just want to be a very holistic solution that kind of helps fill the gaps in Shaker.
Yeah, that's really great. So can you tell us a little more about yourself and how you became involved and an executive director of NewONEShaker?
Okay, certainly. Well, I'm a product of this community, as you mentioned earlier. I grew up in Shaker. I'm almost afraid to say it's really a long time ago, 1981 Shaker graduate. And like you said, 3 of my children are Shaker alum as well, class of 2000, 2005, 2006. And currently 3 of my grandchildren are enrolled in the district. So we kind of call ourselves Shaker Legacy. One, I have 2 at the high school, 2 grandchildren at the high school, and 1 at Woodbury. Right out of high school, I attended Ohio University, but then went on like 30 years later to North Carolina A&T State University to complete my bachelor's degree. I was busy raising a family. I got a little interrupted there and was busy raising a family. And so then after my children had gone off to college and I'd empty nested, I decided it was time for me, and went ahead and completed my undergraduate work and then went on to law school at Florida A&M. Some would refer to me as kind of a boomerang kid. Those of us that grew up in Shaker and then we leave for a period of time and then we come back home. So that was me. Upon returning home after being gone for like 10 years, I continued working in the nonprofit arena in Akron, Ohio, before being approached to help found NewONEShaker. So that's how I got here.
Yeah, I actually lived in Akron for a little bit, so I I definitely understand how there are similar issues. I mean, all over the country, but in Akron,
Exactly.
in that specific community. Do you feel like your education, like the topics that you focused on, kind of played into issues of equity and diversity that
Yeah,
you saw?
absolutely. Absolutely. So, with the undergraduate work in criminal justice, of course, there's so much in the
Yeah.
criminal justice system that needs equity work desperately. And so that's part of it. And then, of course, being legally trained as well, you see so much lack of equity on so many levels. And so, what has happened is my education has allowed me to kind of marry my passions with what I've been trained to do and to be able to do it on a community level. I
Mhm.
know there's always the option of litigating and being in the courtroom, the whole law and order thing, but I feel like there's a lot of that going on. And I decided to use my legal training in a different way so that I could have more of a direct impact on the community.
Yeah, that's great. So I just kind of gave a quick overview of the lack of representation at the
Yeah.
museum. And unfortunately, that's not uncommon for museums. Like the museum field, I mean, even like the history field, the art field, like have traditionally been very white fields. Um, and so this is something that I would say probably almost every museum is kind of struggling with, facing, grappling with. But what would you say is the importance of representation in museums, in cultural fields, and beyond, like the government and education, everything like that?
Exactly. Well, representation, diversity, equity, and inclusion really matters to NewONEShaker. It's imperative first to accurately portray and memorialize our history on a national level and local community level. Just we need an accurate depiction of American history, and it needs to be honest and authentic. That's the first thing. And when we don't have that, it sort of innately causes disparities and inequities, and because we're not even representing where we are and how we got here in an accurate manner. We need all voices because all voices participated on nationally, locally, etc. Everyone participated to a certain degree. And when we provide that kind of representation, whether it's at the board level, whether it's on your staff, whether it's in your exhibits, then we are really showing the rich history that makes us who we are and makes our communities who they are.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like you said, Shaker Heights, especially, we think of it as an international model,
Yes,
and then that history isn't told in in our exhibits, and what a loss, right? Like
exactly,
it's such a
exactly.
missed opportunity, and it's not authentic at all.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So in how is NewONEShaker specifically addressing gaps in equity and diversity in Shaker Heights and possibly surrounding communities?
Okay, so basically, like I said earlier, we attempt to fill the gaps. So, as it pertains to students, families, and the community. So, sometimes that involves direct programming. Like, for example, we did a Summer and Shaker initiative, and that had to do with the recreation for the students of Shaker during the summer. Because, of course, when the pandemic hit, the schools were very, very focused, as they should have been and needed to be, on remote learning. And that was something that had to happen instantly. And so there was kind of a gap when it came to the recreational opportunities for the students of Shaker, because the priority was the academics, of course, because that's when it happened. So what we did, NewONEShaker partnered with the Shaker Engagement Collaborative, which I would highly suggest the Shaker Historical Society become a part of the Shaker Engagement Collaborative, because the collaborative brings together any or all of the community organizations and gives us an opportunity to work together. And that way we don't have so many silos and repeated work or people stepping on other people. We're able to accomplish a lot more together. So we partnered with the Shaker Engagement Collaborative, and we raised money for micro grants to provide to several community organizations that would then in turn provide recreational opportunities for the students of Shaker. And in order to really be equity focused and look at it through an equity lens, we required those organizations to have at least 50% of their participation come from the Ludlow, Moreland, and Lowmond neighborhoods. And that worked out very, very well. So we were able to serve many of the children of Shaker through this program. So that was just one example of how we help fill the gaps. Another way is by offering equity training. So right now we have our winter equity cohort going on that will be going through the end of March, I believe. And we offered a fall cohort, and these were community cohorts where people from the community, from organizations, from the city, from different places were able to participate in equity training. And I have to give a shout out to Van Aken District. We all love Van Aken District, but Van Aken District was really, really instrumental in our winter equity cohort. They've been watching NewONEShaker and watching the work we've been doing. They've been very pleased and wanted to collaborate with us. So they offered us a substantial scholarship to be able to have community members attend our Leading for Equity training without any cost to them. Along with Van Aken District was Shaker PTO Council, who's also participated in the equity training as well as helping to fund the equity training. So it's been amazing. We just try to help fill those gaps and try to create as much awareness around equity, because we realize that it all starts with awareness. You have to be aware. You have to learn what you don't know before you can move forward and start taking action.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And that's something for me being very new. And I'm not from Shaker Heights originally. And so like you just mentioned the Shaker Engagement Collaborative, I had never heard of that before. So I
Okay.
quickly wrote that down.
Great, awesome.
Yeah, so I think it really is just learning, and being aware of what is going on in the community and
Right.
where those gaps are, because I think that any museum sees themselves as a resource for the community, but if we aren't filling the needs of the community, then we're not going to be used as a resource.
Exactly. And I can even say, I mean, I grew up in Shaker and I had heard of the museum, but I didn't even know where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, spending many, many years in Shaker and raising my children in Shaker, I've never been to the museum.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a testament to the fact that even being right here, literally in my own backyard, and didn't even have knowledge of the museum. So part of the challenge for the museum, from my perspective, is reaching those families that may not even know you exist.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. You are not the only one to have told me that. We actually had an event on our grounds last summer, and there were people walking by, we're across from Horseshoe Lake. So we get a lot of walkers who came by and they were like, I never realized this was a museum,
Exactly.
And it's not obvious when you're driving by. We have
Right.
a very small sign and we kind of just look like an average house because it's in a residential area.
Yes.
But yeah, so I 100% agree. How do we reach those communities who maybe don't know we exist or have never been here or just don't feel comfortable coming here? How do we then reach them where they are?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's kind of what sparked our conversation about the pop-up exhibits.
Exactly.
Right.
So I just you mentioned, how the Van Aken District sponsored that training. So if there are other organizations or businesses in the community
Mm-hmm.
that are interested in sponsoring, how can they go about doing that?
Well, that would actually be very easy. They can visit our website, first of all, to learn even more about us, which is www.newoneshaker.org, all spelled out. They can contact me directly at executive director at the number one shaker.org. So we have a different URL for our email, but and I'll be happy to put that in the chat as well. But you can contact me directly. You can go to our website. We would certainly encourage community members to go visit our website. And if you click on I believe it's red, the red tab at the top of our landing page, you can sign up to be able to get our newsletter and have all of our information. We put out a newsletter once a month. We have an absolutely amazing communications and marketing officer, Shirley Pastor McCormick, who is just fabulous. We would not be able to function without Shirley. And so she's the one that handles our website and all of our social media marketing and so much more. I couldn't even name it all. But she has it set up so that if you just go to our landing page and click on that top red bar, you'll be able to get all of our information. And we have a wealth of resources on our webpage.
Yeah, I'm signed up for your newsletter, so I can attest
Wonderful.
that it is a wealth of information. They're so well put together. So
thank you. Thank you.
So what you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but what differences have you seen NewONEShaker kind of already making in the community? You're so young as an organization,
right?
But
right.
You're already seeing differences.
We are seeing differences. Well, one of the ways we're able to see some of these differences is because in our core values and our guiding values, we try to really stick to those. Like we're a role model. We try to be a role model for the community and how to champion systemic change. We collaborate with other organizations. We don't try to just do everything on our own. And you'll notice in our mission statement, it says NewONEShaker collaborates with school districts and other organizations to create relationships, systems, and structures to help ensure equitable opportunities for Shaker students and families while intentionally closing the achievement gap and improving outcomes for children of color. And so of that collaboration and that helping to create relationships, sometimes between organizations, is very, very helpful. I can give you an example of a couple of the things we're doing as far as helping to create relationships or foster relationships. We've been having conversations with Cleveland Clinic Foundation, as well as combined with the high school, Cleveland Clinic, NewONEShaker, Shaker Schools Foundation, all kind of talking together to help foster a relationship that might create a pathway for employment with Cleveland Clinic Foundation. And so helping to start those conversations or make those introductions. We're doing the same thing through one of our board members, Dr. Steve Porter, with University Hospitals, again, to help create pathways for careers. We are encouraging the community, the students and the community, to look at all of the potential options available to students for success. And if there's anything we can do to help that happen, it doesn't mean we have to put on the programming itself. It just means that if we can help make that connection happen so that perhaps the school district or the foundation or a couple of organizations getting together can make that happen, then we will have done our job.
Yeah, you're kind of in the prime position as an organization to almost be like the center and like a facilitator connecting
exactly.
all these different organizations, because it's interesting. Like we're talking now, we're a history organization, but then you're talking with the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and like the medical field and everything. And it really is, yeah, it's amazing how you're able to facilitate these connections and discussions.
Yeah, it's
and
exciting.
I'm excited that we can be a part of that too, and
yes.
And you can help connect us with other people and other organizations.
Absolutely. And we are really excited about our newfound partnership with the Shaker Historical Society. We're really, really excited about that. We want to help you make an impact, and it'll be mutually beneficial for you, for us, for the community at large. So that's what we're looking to do.
Sorry about that. I got distracted by a
That's
comment.
okay. Not a problem. I know you're wearing a lot of hats right
Yeah,
now, so
I'm
that's
like
okay.
looking at multiple screens right now. This is kind of a shorter discussion today. So my last question for you, and then if anyone watching has questions, please feel free to include them in the comments on Facebook. And we will, as I said, I'm trying to keep an eye on multiple screens to see if there are any comments or questions. But what are your goals and dreams for NewONEShaker this year and maybe in the recent future in the coming years?
Okay, well, basically, we're just looking to make a significant and positive impact in creating awareness, taking action, and continuously advocating for equity in our community. Our vision is to help Shaker live up to its reputation. See, Shaker has this amazing reputation around diversity and around being a diverse community and being a community that knows how to navigate diversity. We have truly, as a community, checked the diversity box. But what we're still working on is checking the equity and inclusion boxes. And that's where NewONEShaker wants to be able to help. We know we can't do it all because none of us can handle it all by ourselves. It's a community effort. It takes a village. It just does. And so we know it requires the community organizations, the school district, the city, the businesses, the residents, and the students. The students are our future, and their voices matter too. And in some instances, their voices might matter a little bit more than ours, but it's just important to pull us all together. And that's part of the reason for the NewONEShaker, the one, because we want to pull together the city, the community, the schools, the students, the families, the businesses, pull us all together to be working for a common goal. And that way, the city of Shaker Heights and all of its constituents will be able to really live up to that reputation of Shaker being that model city for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things that we say at NewONEShaker, it's kind of my phrase, and you've probably seen it at the end of my letter from the executive director on our newsletter. It's, we can do this, we work together, we find solutions, we lead by example. We are NewONEShaker.
That's great. I think that's as you said, you want to lead by example, and that's an excellent example for all of us.
Thank you.
I also wanted to, I think you touched on it, and it's a very important note how you said that Shaker kind of has set the standard for diversity, but that does not mean equity and
Right.
inclusion. And
Right.
I think that's very important, a very important distinction, because those terms do not mean the same thing.
Right.
And
Exactly.
even in my little intro, I said, diversify our board, but that does not mean equity. And
Right.
so that's, it's something that like I am mindful of as a director, we are mindful of as a board. So that was kind of an oversimplification, because those do not mean the same thing. And
Right.
so
They
we have a long way to go to be an equitable museum and organization. I feel like we can get there with NewONEShaker's help and with the help from our community.
Exactly.
As you said, it takes a village. So it really is a community effort. And I'm very excited to be working together further. And just to once again mention our email addresses in case anyone wants to reach out directly.
Yes.
Angel's is executive director at NewONEShaker.org.
That's correct.
And then mine is director at shakerhistory.org. And so we have one question that says, I'd love to hear a little about specifically how SHS and NewONEShaker could collaborate on programming or exhibits. You touched on some conversations, but do you have any plans you could share? So do you want to jump in and maybe give some ideas?
We have some ideas, like I said, and like you said, we talked about the pop-up exhibits, and there's several other things that we could do to start to kind of help introduce or reintroduce the Historical Society to the community. By our partnership itself, our new partnership will be able to put out information on our website and support different events you may be having that we can promote through our social media channels, because perhaps we have at least part of an audience that perhaps the Historical Society does not yet have. So we can start with that. Other than that, we don't have any specific plans as of yet, but we will definitely be working in that direction.
Yeah, I think we had an initial meeting where we got very excited and then we had like ideas, but unfortunately nothing beyond that right
All
now.
right. Well, that was just what, last week. So we need a
It's
little bit of
yeah,
time.
yeah. Yeah, it's I think we're all kind of a little busy right now with the pandemic and
Just
everything,
slightly.
but
All right.
yeah, I mean, I think that as Angel mentioned again, like we had talked about kind of doing pop-up exhibits in the community. I also think that not that our educator isn't here right now to join this conversation, but she is very much looking for ways to reach the students at home, like with take-home kits and everything.
Yes.
And so that's like a discussion we can have about how to do that and how to introduce different aspects of our history kind of once we have, again, a better sense of in our own organization of these
Right.
different historical periods and historical events. How can we then get that into the hands of students and parents?
Exactly. And I do
So
have one idea that
yes.
seems like it's pretty intuitive, but with our Summer and Shaker program, that would probably be a great entrance to the students, because that is the opportunity for recreational and learning opportunities for students. And we've done similar with other organizations that actually reached out to the students and were able to deal with them, even in a virtual setting or hybrid setting, of course, socially responsible hybrid setting with, social distancing and things like that. So that would probably be a great place to start between the pop-ups and participating in the Summer and Shaker program for the students.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to have more conversations
Yes,
about this.
absolutely.
And then we also had a question. Can you talk about the fact that SHS is going to reconfigure its permanent exhibits? Yeah, so this is again the kind of the purpose of the director's desk is like, surprise, here's new information. Nothing is set in stone yet, but we have a we call it the space task force to evaluate our physical space and the best utilization of that space. And so part of that includes what are rooms that are currently used as storage that could be turned into exhibit space. Kind of like, do we need 3 rooms on the Shakers if we're trying to tell more of our history as a city? So we have, again, these are very preliminary discussions. As a smaller committee, we actually have a full board meeting tomorrow evening to kind of discuss this. But we would really like, kind of in an ideal world, with the time and money that comes with creating a whole new permanent exhibit, we would love to have an exhibit that focuses on the Ludlow Community Association and integration and, voluntary busing and all of that, going back to the rich history. We have such a rich history that is currently not told, and we would love to have a space that is dedicated to those stories. And as I had previously mentioned, we don't really have stuff in our collection to tell that story. So then that's, another facet is it's great to say, well, we want to have this exhibit, but then what do you put in the exhibit if you don't have anything? And so I had again very preliminary discussions with Megan Hayes at the local history department at the library, because they do have those materials but don't necessarily have the space to exhibit them. So those are kind of some of the partnerships that we're looking at. But then beyond that, again, like, I should not be the one telling that story. I should not be curating that, because that isn't my history. And so then how do we bring in voices from the community? How do we compensate people for their time and their expertise during this process? That's kind of everything that we're thinking about, which is why, again, I said, if you have any comments, questions, want to be a part of this, reach out to me, because we're kind of we're on the ground floor now, trying to build up. And that's in terms of changing the physical exhibits. That's kind of what we're thinking, is adding permanent exhibits. So when visitors come, they see themselves represented and they get the full gamut of Shaker Heights history, not a history that kind of ends at 1920.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. And you may also want to include the Moreland Community Association as well, because they have rich history also.
Yes. And I know we just, if you, I mean, not just you, Angel, but in general, the collective you, we had a program on Thursday with Dr. Donna White, who is a Moreland resident.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, she was such a wonderful storyteller. I feel like I could have listened to her just for like hours and hours and hours. But that recording is on our YouTube page, and I'm aware of like the wonderful oral histories she's been doing in the community. Her talk is worth listening to because she mentions representation as well. She talks about when she was first introduced to Toni Morrison, and seeing herself represented in literature and art and everything. Right. And Thursday also happened to be Toni Morrison's birthday. It was Toni Morrison Day. So it was kind of very fitting, but going back to representation and that importance of seeing yourself in art and literature, culture, museums. We want to provide that opportunity and make people feel seen and heard as an organization.
That's awesome. And I had an opportunity to work with Dr. Donna White and the library, Shaker Library, for the Shaker's engagement with the 1619 project that NewONEShaker partnered with the library to put on in the fall, which went very, very well. And Dr. Donna White is amazing. And so, yeah, I understand. I definitely understand.
Yeah, I think it was by far our most well-attended event. She was kind of like a rock star, basically.
Great.
So we had a comment that said maybe a call for donations to grow our permanent collection. So I definitely, I guess this is right now, I'm going to put out a call for donations, but I also, again, want to acknowledge that there is that level of trust that needs to be built. So if there isn't that feeling that, we have historically represented this community and your voice, you might be hesitant to donate to us. And I get that. And I get that it takes time. And so this initial phase, as I said, is trying to rebuild that trust and making you feel like this is an organization that is worth donating to in terms of time, objects, because it's not easy to give up your personal history and your personal objects. And so, so like I said, first step is trust.
Yes. And it takes time. It's just like NewONEShaker being a relatively new organization. We're still in our infancy stages. And so we basically spent our first year building relationships and building trust in the community. So that's very, very important. But along the lines of a call for donations, NewONEShaker could really use the help of the community as well, so that we can continue to provide equity training, and we can continue to partner with other organizations for great programming and things like that. So, and you don't have to be just an individual to donate. Businesses can donate, and organizations, we can come together and put on different things. So yes, support us, go to visit our website.
And so I'm looking at Facebook now. So somebody pointed out that Carl and Lewis Stokes were Shaker residents. And so, that goes back to the fact that two extremely significant people, not just in Shaker history, but Cleveland history, in the area history. And there is no mention of them in our museum right now. So we have work to do.
That sounds like a good place to start. Exactly.
Yeah. So, I think I don't see any other comments, but Angel, thank you again for, taking some time out today to talk with me and talk about this collaboration partnership. And I will this is being recorded. So if anyone has, is seeing this after the fact, it will be on our Facebook page. It will also be uploaded to YouTube. If you don't use Facebook, don't use social media. And I guess, I just lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. We will also upload it to our webpage if you provide it to us, so that
yeah, absolutely.
Our members will be able to take a look if they weren't able to join us today.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah. And so the last thing I was going to mention was that I will update the description for the video to include our contact information, our websites, all of that stuff. So that way it's all in one central location.
Awesome. And I will look forward to speaking with you again soon so that we can start planning and moving forward.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your sunny Sunday.
Yes, you as well. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.